One of the hot topics every year, usually right around the beginning of the year, is the top locations to go and retire outside of the United States. Now, often these locations are in Europe. And so in today's video, what we want to discuss is why people are choosing to leave the States and retire.
Well, one great reason is the cost of living. It's less expensive in most places in Europe, not everywhere, but a lot of places in Europe that hit these top 10 lists are less expensive for food. I mean, I think every grocery store we've gone to so far throughout Europe, our price for coffee and eggs and your basics has been less expensive.
Right.
Not by a little bit, but by quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, we eat in a lot. So that's huge savings for us right there alone.
Yeah, and then accommodations, considerably cheaper usually, and you're getting just a lot more for your money. So, I mean, you could probably find a place that costs the same or similar, say in a town in Europe and then also in the United States, but what are you getting for that price tag? So I think there's just so many appeals for the cost of living being so much less and why that's drawing people to Europe. One of the things is that, you know, a lot of people when they reach that retirement age, they have their Social Security and that's about all they're going to have for the most part to rely on. And that's a real struggle. It's not a lot of money and it really doesn't get you very far when you are in the States. So outside of the States, you get a lot more for that money and you're able to live on that.
Not only are you able to live on it, but you're able to live on it. You can have less for your accommodations. Your grocery store is going to be less expensive, which might allow you to go out for dinner every once in a while, which is also less expensive than eating out in the United States.
Yeah.
We've covered that in the past. That's a different topic, but it's just quality of life.
It's just really across the board. We find that the cost of living elsewhere is just cheaper, and we personally have experienced with cost of living ourselves when we compare our life back in the States. You know, we were living within our means and well below it because we were saving a lot of money to be doing what we are doing now. But for what we were spending, we weren't getting very much. This was cutting out pretty much all of our entertainment, cutting out everything. And then all of a sudden you move to or travel through Europe and you find that you're able to go out for those lunches. You're able to go out for, to go and see sites or do whatever, get transportation and have all of those expenses be quite low. So I would say cost of living is definitely a huge plus.
Okay, now one of the questions we get all the time is what about taxes? We obviously still pay our U.S. taxes like we normally would every April on schedule, but there are countries, if you're planning on retiring outside the United States and living in one country, there are countries that will give you a tax break if you do so.
Right, there's some great incentives and that is really going to be country by country, so that's going to be on your part to research, but there are some really great programs out there. Now the other benefit for people when they are choosing, should I move outside the States to retire, is healthcare. I think healthcare for a lot of people is really top on the list. Now, for what we do personally and we travel around, we have to carry a global health plan. So the cost of that for us, we feel at this point, is actually quite minimal. But as we get older, this price will continue to go up and get to the point that it's really kind of out of range maybe for us.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it for sure. But yeah, that is a very good point. We've done videos on healthcare in the past. If you want more information on those, go check those videos out. But I think healthcare is first and foremost on most people's minds, and you don't need to worry about it because the healthcare throughout the world and especially Europe is spot on.
It is great. Yeah, from our experience, which has been very minimal, we really have received wonderful care in really great facilities. English has been very tiny amount of an issue. We have been able to get by no problem. We have not worried about having to go in and receive any kind of health care. Brian had a colonoscopy. I mean, we haven't had just minor cuts and scrapes or anything taken care of. We've had some other bigger things done. So I would say that healthcare would be a huge draw. And then back to like the reason of like your insurance goes up because of the kind of travel we're doing. So the benefit for people who choose to say pick a location and retire to a location, you are getting temporary or permanent residency in that area. And a lot of these countries then offer health care to you included in that. So it becomes even more beneficial.
It becomes even more beneficial. And you know, we pay out of pocket for a lot of our things. And those are also very inexpensive. Okay, safety. Now this is always a hot topic. We mentioned this in another video a while back. We got some negative comments on it. Hey, listen, the United States is completely safe. If you don't feel safe in the United States, you must live in the ghetto. Well, we all know that that's not necessarily true. 2 days, I think, after I got that comment, there was a shooting in Kansas City, the Super Bowl parade. Those things don't happen outside the United States in general, and definitely not as often. So I think that living outside of the United States, in a lot of cases, is safer.
Yeah, and we've received comments from so many different people that also travel all the time, and they've had the same experience of that you just in general have this safer feeling. We have yet to be in a location where we didn't feel safe being out at night and walking. Right. And we do know that there are areas in the world where you're not going to go outside and walk, but I can tell you there's a lot of those areas that are in the United States. So, in general, I have felt, as a female traveler, I have felt much safer traveling in Europe than I feel most of the time while I'm home back in the States. Now, being able to enjoy life after retirement, as far as being able to travel around and go explore, and when you are in the States, if you just want to travel from one state to another, which compared to Europe is country to country, the United States is just so massive, that it is going to cost you. Those flights, we all know the flights in the United States, although I have been seeing a few budget flights where you can get around a little bit cheaper. But in Europe, you can hop from one country to another. We had a flight that we took that was, $27 to get from I guess the east area of Portugal, or the north of Portugal, right, down to the south of Portugal. Sure. Yeah. And so, you can get around, you can hop all throughout Europe and explore and see all of this part of the world, where if you're in the States, you're pretty limited.
It's not quite as easy. I flew from Seattle to Sacramento one year for $235. $235 from Seattle to Sacramento. Now, it is what it is. We also flew from Tampa to Seattle one way, 100, yeah. For $150.
Yeah,
each.
it was about 100,
right.
And so those bargains are to be had, but
right.
not as we don't have the same budget airlines that they have, or the train systems, and the availability of all of that. Just being able to enjoy life once again in your retirement on a limited budget, and be able to really explore the world.
Right. We can take a 4 or 5, 6 hour bus ride in Europe and get to a whole different country. Okay, one thing that we've really enjoyed is escaping the U.S. Politics. It doesn't matter who we meet around the world, what country they're from, they always ask us about our politics. Not because they really necessarily care what's going on, but they care what we think about our politicians. And it doesn't really matter if you're Republican or Democrat, makes no difference to us. The point is, politics in the United States has gotten completely out of control, and it's not like that anywhere else in the world. Now, every country has their politics, of course, but they're not as intense or divided as we are in the United States.
I think that being able to escape that, and being able to be in another country, and you turn on the news and you're turning on more of an international news, and it's great because we can just see what is actually going on around the world. And so they'll cover U.S. politics outside of the U.S., but it is like a 5-minute, if that, segment, and
right.
They just are on the main topics. They're not just back and forth. I think that's what gets old.
They're not trying to persuade you any direction. They're giving you the news.
Yeah. Now, another area that I really enjoy is the quality of food difference that you see when you're in Europe. Not saying that you can't get quality food in the U.S., but we all know that there's a lot of things on our shelves in the United States that are not even allowed on the shelves outside of the United States, and especially not in Europe. So, when we get home and we immediately see the creamers, the coffee creamers, and we see the food coloring,
right.
all the cereals that are available.
Cheese Whiz.
Yeah.
Cheese Whiz is a good one. I haven't seen Cheese Whiz in Europe. I haven't looked for it either.
Yeah. So, and I think just being able to, every single place that we have been to pretty much has had a farmer's market that is not just you know, we have a farmer's market in our town as well, and it's great. You go down there and you can buy some fresh produce from farmers, but let me tell you, you're paying quite considerably more
Yes.
for that because you are getting it from a farmer. Here where we are right now in Fethiye, Turkey, we go to the farmer's market, and I can't even tell you how many locals are there bringing their produce from their home for a price that is just incredibly low. So quality of food is a major plus.
Okay, I know that I'm more relaxed than I was. Now, I used to have a full-time job. I used to work all the time. Now I don't work all the time. This is work. We are doing this. This is work, but it's our schedule. In general, I think Europeans are more relaxed. They're not racing all over the place. They're not doing all these things that they feel like they need to do. In the United States, we are a consumer-driven country, and we just feel like we need to make more money so we can buy more stuff. It's really not like that in Europe.
No, it's definitely been a much more relaxed life, and I know when we do go home, we feel that stress level kind of raise up where you kind of just feel like you have to fill the time. So you just feel like, oh, we need to go see and so and making plans. And yeah, so I do think that is a plus. Now the other, really kind of what wraps all of this up is, in general, your quality of life altogether. You know, you put it all together, the cost of living, your health care, the food, everything just kind of put in one is really why people are choosing to live outside of the States. Now what we are going to do is we are going to compare 3 top areas that a lot of people choose to retire to in the United States, and then we are going to compare them to 3 areas that are popular choices where people retire in Europe. Now when we are going over these places, these are not cheap places that we've chosen. We haven't chosen like expensive places in the States and then cheap places in Europe. These are pretty comparable as far as size and cost comparison.
So the categories we're going to cover are your rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in any said location, and that's rent, that's not Airbnb. We're also going to cover what you may pay in utilities at these locations, and we'll cover what your mobile plan may be in these locations as well.
We will also be covering grocery prices, just comparing a few of those basic items that most people would buy in each area. We are also going to be covering just your basic transportation, as well as eating out for kind of just your average cost meal compared to maybe a more mid-range meal.
Right, and you need to have something to drink with that meal too. So we'll be covering what you might have to pay for a beer in each location.
Right, and also a bottle of wine for at home. Now the first place that we are going to start with is a little bit close to home, to our hometown of Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, now the rent in Seattle is quite high. You're looking for a 1-bedroom apartment, $2,370 for a single bedroom, 1-person apartment.
Right, and that is in the city center. If you want to put yourself outside the city center, you're going to be paying about $1,875. So pretty considerable to live in Seattle.
Now, and Seattle's a beautiful city.
It is.
Do you want to pay that much to live there? That's up to you. You've got the water, you've got the mountains, you can go fishing, you can go hunting, you can do all those outdoor things that you love to do. So that's for you to decide. They've also got the Washington Husky football team that you might want to go watch. Seattle Mariners are going to be good this year. You just wait and see. There's a lot to do besides the Seahawks, fishing, and hunting.
One thing Seattle is known for is their food scene. They do have a lot of great restaurants to go to, but it is going to cost you. So going to, say, a lower end restaurant is going to run you about $20 per person, and going to a mid-range restaurant is going to around $50 per person. And that, of course, is not including that tip that is, as we discussed, somewhat expected.
Somewhat expected. Now, there is something else Seattle's known for, and that's the beer scene. You're going to pay between $7 and $8, usually closer to $8 for that pint. And a bottle of wine, it's going to run you about $15.
Yeah, that's a bottle of wine in the store. So at the restaurant, a lot more than that. So Seattle itself is not a cheap place to live, but it is a popular area that people do choose to go to. We loved our time in that area. Doesn't offer you the best weather, but if you choose to go there, there is a lot to do.
So the average living cost in Seattle for one person is $3,810.
And that is going, when we are giving you the average price, we are going with the city center price of rent. So we're not cutting in corners. This is what it's going to cost you to be right there in the center of everything.
Okay, next on our list is Denver, Colorado. Now, Denver, we've had some friends that moved out to Denver, and they absolutely love Denver, Colorado. The price for rent you're going to pay in Denver is $2,150, and that's for the city center.
Right. Now, outside the city center, you're going to pay around $1,750. Now, you know, it's an area that we have not been to yet, but it is high up on our list to go to and visit. We just have heard some great things. You know, it's kind of that central area to get out, you know, not be by the water so much, but you have the snow, you still have the different seasons and everything. So we've just heard a lot of really wonderful things about Denver and do hope to make it there soon.
Well, I understand they have some great golf and some great breweries as well, from what I understand. We'll make our way there maybe this summer. Maybe we'll do a house sit in Denver this
Test
summer.
The waters
Test
for
the
later
waters.
on. Now, eating out in Denver is going to cost around $20 at a lower range restaurant and about $40 at a mid-range restaurant, once again without that tip.
Right, and from what I understand from the research we've done, you can get a pint of beer in Denver for $6. I expect that to go up. I just don't think there's possibly a way with their great beer that you're going to pay $6 a pint, but we'll find out.
And at least it's less than Seattle. So a bottle of wine at the grocery store is going to run you about $16. And so that brings the average cost of living for a single person to live in Denver, Colorado to $3,442. So the next comparison and the last place in the United States is going to be Tampa, Florida. Now, we have visited Tampa, Florida, and we really loved it. We actually, even when we went there, we're like, wow, this is a place we could see ourselves retiring, get us to that tropical area.
Right. Now, we have experienced some high humidity in Malaysia, which we didn't like, so we have not been there in the summertime, so note that. But city center rent is going to cost you $2,040.
Yeah, and outside the city center is going to be about $1,750 again. So once again, staying right in that similar range for rent in all of these places. Now, Tampa had a lot to go see and do. There was quite the, I mean, you're right on the water, and it's absolutely beautiful. So you can make your way to a beach. The town was really pretty. We really enjoyed visiting there.
So I kid a little bit about the humidity. Where we're from, it rains most of the year, so I guess I could put up with a little bit of humidity and maybe a hurricane here or there. But no, we love Tampa. Beautiful city, very clean. I'd be inclined to buying a boat though, if I was there.
Yeah, it almost seems like you'd have to have that. So that blows the budget out the water anyway. Now, if you want to eat out in Tampa, you're going to be spending about $20 for that low end area, and then about $46 per person to go get something kind of more mid-range. Once again, without that tip.
Right. Now, my daughter's from St. Petersburg, Florida. That's where she's lived for quite a while now, and they've got some great breweries as well. You're going to pay about $650 to $750 for a beer at one of those fantastic breweries.
Now, a bottle of wine is going to run you around $15.50. So all the wine in all these three places in the United States has maintained a pretty average price. Now, if you want to live in Tampa in the city center for one person, it is going to run you about $3,379. Okay, so now we are moving our comparisons over to Europe, and let's kind of see how much money we can save by now getting over to that area. Where are we going to start?
We're going to start in Valencia. That's where we started when we started this whole crazy journey of ours.
Our first stop.
Our first stop. We had a great time in Valencia. Your average price in city center in Valencia is going to cost you $1,100.
Yeah, and so right outside of the city center, you're going to be running about $850 for a one bedroom.
Right. Now, when we got there, we were excited and ready to go. We found the beach a couple times. We found all the history. We found a lot of things to do that we'd never seen before. So that was a lot of the excitement for us, a lot of free entertainment because we were simply sightseeing and doing things we weren't used to doing. But with that being said, you know, our stimulation of getting outside the United States and starting something new and saving money was pretty exciting.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd point out was right away that we noticed with Valencia as our first stop was how incredibly clean the city was. It was so clean and so nice, so I can see the draw of why people move there. Now, eating out in Valencia is going to cost you about $13 at a lower end restaurant and about $24 per person at a mid-range restaurant.
Right, you can get some tapas for pretty inexpensive.
Pretty low, yeah.
If you just want a snack.
Well, and that goes along with your beer.
With my beer, exactly. Have that snack along with a $2.80 beer of your choice, and a bottle of wine is going to run you about $5.45. So
in the store, yeah.
Quite a bit difference.
A lot different, yeah. We can see the draw already
Yes.
of moving to Europe. The next popular destination in Europe to retire to is Split, Croatia, which we can completely understand because we also traveled there and spent a couple months.
We spent 2 months there, and we loved it. I think I enjoyed it even more than Carrie did.
Yeah, it
But
ranked higher on your list.
It ranked really high on my list. You can expect to pay in the city center about $690 for that one-bedroom apartment. And outside the city center,
About $520 outside the city center.
right, and again, there's a lot to do for us that had never been to a destination like that before. The beaches, the water, Old Town. We had a lot to do for very inexpensive.
Yes, I mean, you're right on the water, like Brian was saying.
Yeah.
We could walk a few minutes from our place and we were at the beaches, a lot of little cafes and restaurants, and of course the old town of Split is absolutely fantastic to walk through, so we can do that over and over again. And a lot of little hikes to do as well, so lots to see and do. Now, eating out in Split is going to run you around $12 at that lower end restaurant and around $22 at the mid-range restaurant.
And you can expect to pay $3.30 for your beer and about $6 for your bottle of wine.
So the average cost to live in Split, Croatia for a single person in a one-bedroom in the middle of the city center is going to be about $1,418.
Okay, our next stop is Lisbon, Portugal. Portugal's been on a top 10 list for retirement destinations for a long time. It's been our one list for just about ever. Lisbon, Portugal, for a place in the city center, you're expected to pay about $1,432 a month.
Yeah, now outside of the city center, you're going to look at to pay around $998. Now, Lisbon has a ton to see and do, and I think one of the huge appeals for Lisbon for us was how many day trips and things there were to do outside of Lisbon. So as far as just that quality of life thing that we were talking about, there is a lot to keep you busy at a very low cost to just kind of get around and go see all of those things. And being right there on the water, I don't know how many days it is a year of blue sky that they have, but it is a lot. That is one of the other appeals, is the climate.
Well, the climate, and if it does start getting kind of that rainy season in Lisbon and Porto up further north, you can jump on that $27 flight on Ryanair, pop yourself down to Faro for a quick weekend of some nice weather.
The Algarve, our favorite area of Portugal. Now, eating out in Lisbon is going to run you about $14 for a lower end restaurant and then about $24 for mid-range. One of the things we weren't mentioning on our Europe eating out that we did on the US is that tip. Tips are not expected in Europe as much, and so that is really on your discretion to do if you want to add that on.
And you can expect to pay $3.25 for that beer, and for that good Douro Valley Portuguese wine, you'll pay $5.40.
Some of our favorite wine is from Portugal. So if you choose to move to Lisbon, it is going to cost you for a single person, one bedroom apartment, going to run around $22.12 per month. So in this video, as just kind of a wrap up, you know, like we said, we covered a lot of locations that if you want to save money, there's a lot of places that you can choose. They're a lot cheaper than the areas that we were covering. We tried to kind of, in a sense, cover apples to apples as far as size of town.
Much as we could,
and the appeal to move there.
Yes.
So, you know, there's a lot of places that we have traveled to. If you would like to explore outside of that area, say Albania is one, or Montenegro, you can can definitely bring your cost of living way down within your means. Yes, exactly. So there are plenty of other options. The other thing that I would point out to you as well is these are just areas we are putting out there that are popular locations to travel to. Each of these countries are going to come with their restrictions of being able to retire there. So some of the processes in some are way easier and the requirements way easier than in others. So you'll want to look into that as well.
And I'd also like to point out prices do change. You know, there is inflation worldwide. We get a lot of comments, no, those aren't the prices. Currently, right now, at the time we shot this video, these are the prices. So rest assured, 2 years from now, it could change.
It could definitely, like in the United States, it's going up.
Weird.
Like that. Yeah.
Now, as always, we'd love to hear from you. What destinations have you found that most appeal to you? And, you know, let us know, because we're looking for places too. We're always on the hunt to find something new. So let us know. Please do us a favor. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And please, if you haven't already, subscribe.
That way you can follow along on our continued journeys. All right.
Cheers.
Well, and it was our top one.
It was our top one forever. And we started in Lisbon, and we moved. I couldn't remember the name of Porto. Okay. Let me start it all over again.